The first billionaire died inside his bunker. Yeah, inside. Not in the snow. Not in the riots. Not because the apocalypse was too strong. Meanwhile, the idiot who built the bunker was outside with a cracked skull, bad lungs, and blood freezing on his face, staring at the same steel door like the dumbest genius alive. Because in that one perfect little disaster, he realized two things at the exact same time. This wasn't rich people cosplay anymore. The world had actually kept the appointment, and the rich had known it was coming. For years, ministers, CEOs, defense contractors, and every old money freak with too much power and not enough shame had been paying him to build private doomsday bunkers before the rest of the world even knew there was a countdown. He thought they were paranoid billionaires buying themselves a deluxe bat cave with nicer lighting, so he did what any gifted cynic with zero respect for his clients would do. He sold them salvation on paper, then built them a coffin with mood lighting. And if this guy had watched even one disaster movie without falling asleep, he might have built himself a backup plan too. So do me a favor, hit subscribe before this man turns rich people panic architecture into a demolition project. He cut corners anywhere he thought he could get away with it. Cheaper reinforcement hidden behind polished concrete. Backup filters that looked perfect on paper and folded the second real pressure hit. Weak points buried so deep, nobody would ever find them. One man knew exactly where those bunkers would fail, and he was freezing to death right in front of one. Then, the world collapsed exactly on schedule. So when he ran to the nearest bunker, half dead and covered in ice, he thought he was running towards safety. Instead, he found the woman he loved already inside. Warm, dry, standing next to one of the billionaires who bought his work. She looked at him through the intercom with the kind of calm that makes your blood go cold faster than the weather. Yeah, this is the part where anyone with 2 brain cells and a Manhwa Origins playlist already knows he's about to get betrayed so hard it needs a structural report. She said the one line that turned the end of the world into something personal. He is richer, he can protect me, and he is better in bed. And then they locked the man who built every billionaire's last safe place outside to die. That should have been the end. Instead, as the cold started shutting his body down, the world split open. Walls turned into stress maps. Steel lit up with pressure lines. Pipes glowed with hidden airflow. Every sealed structure around him started showing its weak points like the apocalypse had peeled the blueprint straight out of reality. And unfortunately for everyone hiding underground, he remembered exactly where he lied. If CO Jamin had been bad at his job, none of this happens. Bad contractors get caught. Bad contractors leave obvious cracks. Bad contractors don't get invited back. Jamin was worse. He was brilliant. Rich men would fly him out to mountains nobody was supposed to own, point at a wall of rock, and ask how long it would hold against fire, pressure, fallout, looters, panic, and God. He'd glance once, run the numbers in his head, and tell them exactly how deep to cut, how thick to pour, how long the filters would last, and how much it would cost to outlive their neighbors. Then he'd smile and shave the guts out of it. Not enough to fail inspection, just enough to turn their survival budget into his retirement plan. Cheaper reinforcement behind imported stone. Lower grade seals buried under cosmetic paneling. Backup scrubbers that passed inspection, looked gorgeous in the paperwork, and would have folded the second the air got ugly. That was his real talent. Not engineering. Translation, he knew exactly how to turn rich paranoia into premium branding. Because that's all bunker money really was, not survival. Separation. These people didn't want to live through the end of the world. They wanted one last chance to prove the end of the world also had a members-only section. And the clients. Oh, they were exactly the kind of people you'd expect. Ministers talking about continuity events with a straight face. Honestly, if these people looked any more suspicious, even Batman would start checking their basement. So hit the bell now, because the second this bunker fraud starts pulling threads, a whole lot of expensive lies are about to come apart. These people didn't want to survive the end of the world. They wanted priority seating. Defense creeps asking whether the public shelters would keep the outer panic occupied. One biotech chairman actually called mass casualty forecasts a market correction. That kind of human. So Jamin did what a gifted cynic does when he mistakes evil for theater. He charged more. He cared less. And he sold luxury coffins with mood lighting. The worst part is, Han Yeseo kept trying to hand him the pattern before it was too late. She didn't know load paths or pressure math, but she knew when paperwork started smelling wrong. Different shell companies kept buying the same kind of land, same law firms, same suppliers, same access to freight tunnels, utility spines, old military roads. 6 buyers on paper, 1 appetite underneath. She asked him why unrelated companies kept ordering bunkers like they were all reading the same script. Jamin laughed, kissed her forehead, and told her rich people copied fear the same way they copied watches. That was the moment he should have stopped joking, and Park Do-hyun made it even easier not to. Old friend, easy smile. Suit too expensive for a guy who called himself just the connector. He kept feeding Jamin contracts, private dinners, sealed envelopes, and handshakes that somehow always happened a week before some new crisis hit the news. Yeseo brought warnings. Do-hyun brought money. Jamin chose the one that spent, which worked beautifully, right up until the city started moving like a drill. First, the blackouts hit neighborhoods the rich only remembered when they needed drivers and cleaners. Then, fuel vanished before anyone admitted there was a shortage. Then, roads near private compounds got cleared, while the rest of the city locked itself into screaming traffic. And when the emergency broadcasts finally came on, they didn't sound scared. They sounded practiced. That's when panic stopped being the explanation. Because this wasn't chaos. It was scheduling. The power didn't die everywhere at once. It died by priority. Poor blocks first. Service tunnels second. Transit cams right after that. Like somebody was walking through the city with a checklist and turning off anything regular people might use to get ahead of the stampede. Then the emergency broadcasts kicked in, and that's when it got ugly. Because the voice on those alerts wasn't scared. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't improvising. It had that smooth, fake calm government tone people use when they've already decided how many strangers are acceptable losses. Remain indoors. Conserve heat. Await further routing. Routing. That word should have slapped him in the face right there. Jamin caught one of the broadcasts inside a half-looted pharmacy. A woman was screaming at a dead card reader. A little kid was wrapped in a coat that clearly belonged to somebody bigger. And over all of it, that polished voice kept talking like this was a weather delay and not civilization getting sorted by net worth. Same script on every screen. Same pauses. Same fake calm. You don't sound that prepared unless you practiced. And the people who were supposed to be important already vanished. The minister scheduled for live TV had been moved to a secure site before the frost warning even hit. A biotech chairman stopped answering calls 10 minutes before the first blackout. Private security convoys were suddenly everywhere, clearing roads that ambulances couldn't get through. Amazing how traffic starts cooperating the second rich people need to leave first. Yeseo saw it too. Even she stopped trying to explain it away. Why are the VIP lanes open? No answer. Why are airport feeds dark? Still nothing. Why do all the cleared roads go north? That question barely had time to land before Do-hyun pulled up in a black SUV with clean tires, warm air, and not one drop of panic on his face, which is a very funny look for a man supposedly trapped in the same apocalypse as everyone else. He rolled the window down. Get in. That was it. No, what happened? No, are you okay? No, this is insane. Just 2 thermal packs in the back, an access card on the console, and a route already loaded on the dash, like this man had been waiting for the apocalypse to start on time. That should have been enough. It wasn't, because when the sky is trying to kill you, and the roads are splitting by income bracket, survival wins a lot of arguments suspicion can't. So, Jamin got in. Yeseo got in. Do-hyun drove. And every block made the lie worse. Public shelters choking. Private gates opening. Military trucks blocking intersections that didn't protect neighborhoods. Just corridors. Then, the route on the dash tightened, and Jamin recognized it before the label even finished loading. Mountainside. Triple Seal. Hidden intake. One of his premium sites. A bunker he'd personally sold as the kind of place that can outlive a country. And the two people sitting beside him were taking him straight to it. Do-hyun didn't say a word before he did it. No warning, no sigh, no fake little betrayal speech to make himself feel complicated. He just reached down beside the driver's seat, pulled up a steel pipe, and cracked Jaemin across the skull so hard the whole world shut off mid-breath. When he came back, he was flat on his back in the snow, staring at floodlights through one good eye and trying to figure out why the cold felt wet. Then the wet kept running. Blood. It had soaked past his ear, down under his jaw, and was already starting to freeze there. He tried to sit up. One arm folded. The other shook like it had lost interest in being useful. That's when he realized what was missing. His thermal coat, his gloves, his access card, his keys. Do-hyun hadn't just dumped him out, he'd stripped him down to the exact amount of dead. A few yards ahead, the bunker entrance was lit up like some obscene luxury hotel for people who thought money should still work after civilization didn't. Men in white cold weather gear were hauling crates through the outer seal. Quick, calm, efficient, no panic anywhere. This wasn't a rescue. It was private boarding for people who got the apocalypse itinerary early. He dragged himself forward anyway. Palm, knee, slip. Palm, knee, blood. The steel threshold was right there, close enough to see, far enough to be a joke. Then, Yeseo stood inside the inner glass wall in a clean coat with dry hair and steady hands, like Winter had been told not to touch her. Beside her was one of the buyers, Assemblyman Choi Min-suk. Jaemin knew that face, smiling on television, talking about sacrifice, pricing it for other people. And behind them, warm light. Real warm light. Not survival. Comfort. Jaemin hit the glass. Or tried to. What actually happened was uglier. He stumbled into it shoulder first, left a blood smear, then slid half a step down like the building itself was rejecting him. Yeseo looked at him. No gasp, no breakdown, no last-second guilt. That was the first truly evil part. She looked prepared. Behind him, the outer blast door started closing. Slow, heavy, certain. Jaemin twisted, lurched for it, and slammed both hands against the steel. The door didn't care. It kept moving with that rich machine confidence, like it had already checked his bank balance and found a reason to keep going. By the time he turned back, Do-hyun was inside. Of course he was. He stepped through the seal, handed one of the guards Jaemin's access card without even looking at him, then moved to Yeseo's side like this had been his seat the whole time. Coward, broker, human forwarding address. Jaemin pressed himself up against the glass, breath breaking apart in front of him. Yeseo. The intercom clicked on. Not him. Her. Don't dress this up like heartbreak. You were already dead. I just refuse to die next to you, she said. Flat, clean, almost bored, like she'd already had this argument in her own head and won it days ago. Jaemin stared at her, then at Do-hyun, then at Choi, who had actually taken one small step back from the glass so Jaemin's blood wouldn't touch his shoes. That one detail said more than any speech ever could. I built this place. Jaemin managed. It came out rough and torn, like his throat was trying to freeze around the words. Yeseo nodded once. I know. No softness, no denial, no lie to make it easier. Just that. I know. His hand dragged down the glass, leaving 5 red lines. Then, why? Small word, barely alive. Yeseo stepped closer, and somehow that made it worse. He could see his own wrecked face reflected over hers. Blood, snow, one eye failing, mouth shaking, and she still looked calm. Not because she didn't understand what she was doing, because she did. I didn't leave you for him, she said. A quick glance toward Choi, not affectionate, transactional. Then her eyes came back to Jaemin. I left you for the side of the door that closes. Nothing hit him right away. That was the ugly part. The pain in his head was still there. The cold was still there. The blood was still there. But that line went in deeper and landed slower. Like his body needed a second to understand he'd just been replaced by a locking mechanism. Do-hyun looked away first. Of course he did. Men like him can help bury you, sure. They just can't watch the dirt hit. Then, the final seal engaged. A violent burst of pressure slammed Jamin backward off the door and into the snow. His head bounced once. Light broke. Sound stretched out. The bunker turned into red smears and white noise. He should have died there. Honestly, he almost did, but as the cold pushed deeper and the blood in his eye turned the whole mountain into a blinking mess, the steel in front of him stopped looking solid. Lines started showing through it. Stress lines, seal seams, pressure routes, hidden air channels running under the door like glowing veins. The whole bunker started giving up secrets, and deep inside the structure that had just chosen money over him, one lower seal flashed wrong. Then again, something in his broken head understood it instantly. The bunker wasn't safe, and now he could see exactly where it would start to fail. Yet the way the steel groaned felt wrong. Not weak, wrong, like the bunker was hiding a lie even its own builder never put there. But if that had been the only thing he learned, this story gets a lot shorter. Jamin shoved himself up on one arm, looked at the lower seal one more time, and the whole entrance cracked open in his head. Not the steel stayed shut, smug and expensive. What changed was everything under it. Stress marks crawled through the concrete. Pressure lines lit up behind the door. Heat bled through buried channels under the snow. Emergency routes, intake runs, bypass seams, dead space between the outer shell and the mountain. Every lie he'd poured into that place started showing itself at once. For maybe 2 seconds, he saw the bunker cleaner half dead in the snow than he ever did paid, sober, and standing in front of the original plans. Then his skull collected the bill. Pain smashed through him so hard, his vision jumped. Blood poured out of his nose. Something warm slipped from his ear and turned cold on his neck, almost immediately. One eye went white and useless. The glowing lines doubled, split, stacked over each other, and suddenly the door had 3 weak points instead of 1. So no, this wasn't some neat little upgrade. His brain had just broken in a useful direction. He tried to crawl and lost time doing it. Actual time. 1 second, his palm was on the ice. Next second, he was face down farther downhill with gravel jammed under his nails and no memory of moving. That was the price. Every answer took something with it. Another flash hit him. This time, the lines didn't stop at the bunker. They dropped under the mountain and ran south through older concrete, municipal concrete, cheap stuff, fast poured, under reinforced, already carrying more load than it should. Jamin froze. There was a public shelter down there. Of course, there was, because rich people never build a private ending without some cheaper box nearby full of civilians they can route the ugly parts through. Heat loss, overflow, air balance, human leftovers. Same scam as always, just buried deeper. He got to his feet badly and started downhill. Every few steps, his sight cut out and came back wrong. A retaining wall went transparent. A buried pipe lit up under his boots. Even the words in his head wouldn't stay put. Intake, seal, pressure, then blank space where the next thought should have been. By the time he reached the shelter entrance, his hands were shaking so hard he missed the rail twice. Inside, it was packed. Families shoulder to shoulder. Kids sleeping in winter coats that didn't fit. Old people coughing into scarves. Volunteers repeating the same calm little script they'd been given, like reading it enough times might make it true. Stay inside. Keep calm. Help is coming. Jamin looked up at the ceiling vents and saw the air moving the wrong way. The shelter wasn't being fed, it was being drained. This wasn't a system failure. It was a harvest. And the sick part, nobody in that room knew they were already paying for shelter with their lungs. A boy in a school blazer was asleep sitting up, chin on his chest, breathing through his mouth like his body had given up waiting for enough air to come through his nose. A woman kept fanning a baby with a bus timetable like paper could manufacture oxygen. Near the back, an old man was coughing so hard 2 volunteers were telling him to calm down, which is exactly the kind of genius advice you get from people who still think this is a weather problem. Above them, the vent kept pulling. Not weak, hungry. Jamin looked again, and the concrete peeled open in his head. Blue pressure lines dropped under the floor. 1 branch fed the room. 3 thicker branches kept going. down, deeper, cleaner, straight into the mountain. That's when it clicked. This shelter wasn't failing by accident. It was being milked. The public wasn't being kept alive. They were being stacked in one place, kept calm, and skimmed for breathable air, while the people with real money sat deeper underground, pretending they'd survived on merit. Which, yeah, is exactly the kind of move rich people would call continuity planning, right before they suffocated a bus driver's kid to keep a wine collector comfortable. A man in an orange municipal vest spotted Jamin staring at the vent map and rushed over clutching a clipboard like paperwork could stop people from suffocating. You know systems. Jamin had blood dried under one ear, one eye half blind, and both hands shaking like bad wiring. Apparently that counted as a certification now. The air's being rerouted. The man didn't ask how, didn't ask who he was, didn't even turn toward the people gasping behind him. He just grabbed Jamin by the sleeve. Then, fix it. We've got protocol. Of course he did. Somewhere overhead, people were getting robbed, breath by breath, and this clown still believed the word protocol was a spell. The intake corridor was a concrete throat behind a locked panel and a bad smell. Jamin got one look at it and hated how familiar it felt. Pressure shunt tucked behind maintenance housing. Public feed throttled down. Private line prioritized. Different layout. Same scam. He'd built cousins of this thing for men who called mass death an inconvenience and asked whether panic could be acoustically isolated. So when the full routing flare hit, the guilt didn't arrive clean. It hit like recognition. There, he said, pointing at the bypass wheel. If I close that, air should kick back into the room. Should? The vest guy snapped. Jamin didn't answer. Because should was what people like him used right before other people died. He reached for the wheel. His vision split sideways. He grabbed again. Wrong place. Instead of the bypass, his hand slammed the relief latch. The chamber exploded in steam. Metal screamed. Lights blew out. Somebody outside started screaming first. Then everybody else joined in, because darkness plus bad air turns a crowd into an animal fast. The vest guy stumbled back and stared at Jamin like he'd just personally invented suffocation. What did you do? Fair question, because for one beautiful, miserable second, So Jamin was not a genius with a broken gift. He was just the same greedy idiot who'd made his fortune shaving safety margins and had now walked into a dying shelter and made it worse. Then the lines came back. Harder, meaner, through the steam, through the blood pounding in his skull. He saw the whole ugly truth at once. You couldn't save this room by fixing one bypass. The system was built to steal. Close one route and the draw would jump somewhere else. Neat repair was a lie for people who still respected the machine. So he stopped trying to repair it and decided to hurt it. He ripped a fire axe from the emergency cabinet, staggered to the intake housing, and brought it down hard enough to crack the regulator clean through. One hit, 2, 3. On the fourth, the buried pressure lines under the floor jerked out of rhythm. The vents coughed. Then the room behind him pulled one long, ugly breath. Real air, cold air. Panicked people don't thank God first when oxygen comes back. They gasp. Then, somewhere deep below the shelter, something expensive started choking. And on the far wall, under 20 years of dust and neglect, a maintenance radio crackled to life. The radio coughed once. Then her voice came through. Jamin, that was it. No panic, no shock, no little breathy, you're alive. Just his name, flat, warm, annoyingly intact. Like him surviving had already been priced in. The whole shelter went quiet behind him, even the kids. That's how ugly the moment was. One voice on that radio, and everybody in the room understood the truth all at once. The rich weren't hidden. They were connected. Jamin pressed his hand to the wall beside the radio. Blood smeared across old paint. You sound comfortable. Static. Then her again. We have a pressure problem. Of course, not are you hurt. Not what happened up there. Just the complaint desk calling from underground. What did you do? She asked. Jamin looked at the cracked regulator, the axe on the floor, the people behind him dragging air into their lungs like they'd stolen it back fair and square. I fixed the public room. A beat, then colder. Fix the pressure, Jamin. Or die proving me right. Behind her, somebody started coughing. Not a clean little throat clear, real choking, wet, panicked. Another voice cut in over the line, angry first, then scared when the sentence ran out of air. Do-in. Already breaking. Good. Jamin leaned into the radio. You picked the wrong bunker. Silence. Then, what does that mean? It means Choi's unit has a weak lower pressure seal. He wiped blood off his mouth with the back of his wrist. West collar. Under the service spine. I shaved the material grade and signed it off anyway. Now, the silence hit harder. Because she knew exactly which job he meant. He refused the delay, Jamin said. Remember that? He said the press conference date mattered more than cure time. Whole country could burn, but God forbid his podium got rescheduled. Metal slammed somewhere under her side of the mountain. Somebody shouted for backup air, and then Do-hyun again, stripped all the way down to his real self. Tell him we can pay him. The line cut sideways in static. Yeseo came back fast, like she wanted his voice buried before it made her side sound as pathetic as it was. You're trying to scare me. No, Jamin said. I'm telling you what you bought. Her next breath was small, not guilty, annoyed, like this was rude. Classic. Rich people love honesty right up until it starts sounding like a Manhwa Origins autopsy on their life choices. Like people above ground were supposed to die quietly and stop making admin harder. We did what we had to do, she said. The ones who prepared were always going to survive. There it was. Not love, not regret, just elitism with good posture. Jamin looked down, and the broken lines lit up again behind his eye. Ducts, valves, buried channels, pressure routes running through the mountain like veins in something rotten. How many people knew? He asked. Nothing. Not right away. Just alarms, coughing, a man somewhere below, begging somebody to open something. Jamin counted in his head. 1, 2, half a beat. That half beat told him everything. This wasn't a panic shelter for a few rich pigs with good timing. This was planned, measured, built to let one side of the mountain breathe through the other side's throat. Jamin, listen, she said. He ricked the radio wire straight out of the wall. Silence dropped hard. And under that silence, beneath the vents, beneath the concrete, beneath every lie he'd ever signed his name to. Not a bunker network, a machine. And every pipe in it was still stealing. He ripped the radio out of the wall, and the silence that followed should have felt good. It didn't, because Yeseo choking on her own good decision. Do-hyun finally learning that premium access still comes with consequences. Great. Beautiful. Love that for them. But the second the line went dead, Jamin saw the floor light up again. And the whole revenge plot got smaller. The shelter lines weren't just feeding bunkers, they were feeding something under the bunkers. That was the first bad part. The second bad part was worse. He recognized the logic, not the exact layout, not the exact materials. He'd never poured this concrete, never signed these routes, never built some smiling parasite for this section of the scam. But he knew the thinking. Same lazy efficiency. Same hidden theft. Same little contractor sin, where the ugly part gets buried behind something expensive and everyone pretends that counts as safety. Nobody spots a lie faster than the guy who used to sell them. Jamin stared harder. One route skimmed air off the public shelter. Another bled pressure out of Choi's unit. Another bypassed both and dropped deeper into old concrete with a kind of confidence that made his skin crawl. That's when it hit him. The billionaires thought they bought the whole system. What they actually bought was the luxury demo, the polished version, the rich people version, the luxury waiting room for idiots who thought exclusivity and survival were the same thing. All that imported stone, mood lighting, biometric locks, private wine storage, just expensive trim wrapped around a deeper system they weren't important enough to see. And that, honestly, was the funniest part. These people sold out the world for reserved seating, and they still ended up as customers. Not kings, not architects. Customers. System voice, deep route pressure shift detected. The voice came through the walls, so faint it barely sounded modern. Not like an alert, like a buried habit. Like this thing had been under the mountain long before the panic, long before the shell companies, maybe long before Jamin ever told himself he was just smarter than everyone else in the room. A volunteer grabbed his sleeve. Is the air stable now? Jamin looked at the vent, looked at the floor, looked at the deeper routes still pulling like the whole city was one big throat, clearing itself for somebody important. And yeah, the answer was ugly. The shelter had air back. For now. But this system wasn't built to stop stealing because one bleeding contractor got pissed off and swung an axe. It would reroute, adapt, pull from somewhere else. That's what machines like this do. That's what people like him do too, apparently. His head throbbed so hard his vision doubled. Blood crawled warm out of his nose, then turned cold before it hit his lip. The deeper route flashed again, and this time, it wasn't just a line. It was an invitation, or a dare. Either somebody found his bunkers, studied every shortcut he ever buried, and copied the exact way he cheated. Or somebody taught him how to think like this before he ever called it talent. That thought landed meaner than the pipe. Because getting betrayed by a woman and a coward? Painful. Finding out you might have spent years as some hidden monster's unpaid apprentice? That sticks. Jamin pulled free of the volunteer, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and started walking. Not uphill, not back to Choi's bunker, past all of it. Because the bunkers were never the whole lie. They were just the part the rich were allowed to buy. And somewhere under the shelters, under the mountain, under every sealed door and stolen lungful of air, something down there already cheated the way he did.
Now, if something under this mountain learned to cheat the way he did, then one of three things was true. Either it copied him, it made him, or just like you, it hit that subscribe button and gave a like to see what happens next. Nah, that won't work. Look, if you made it this far, it really means a lot to me. Your engagement and support helps me make more content like this, including part 2s. Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.